بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Today I will speak based on the question, was the Saudi declaration correct? This has come about from numerous requests that I've received both face-to-face and through our various social media platforms. However, the first thing I will say is that the question itself is wrong. Was the Saudi declaration correct? The reason why the question is wrong, because arguably that is irrelevant. What is more relevant is, was the UK declaration correct? Because at the end of the day, we are responsible, or we come under the remit of the UK declaration rather than come under the Saudi declaration. So unfortunately, as with our practice, it was even before Asr time when people were making declarations themselves, watching Twitter accounts or watching Sky channels or satellite channels and deciding even before Asr that it will be Eid. Now obviously this process is completely wrong. There is a very detailed process by which a khabar can be received from another country, and once that khabar is received, what is the due process and the due diligence that must be carried out by the committee in the UK in order to make that announcement. But unfortunately nowadays, it seems the media seems to control more things than others. That aside though, let's explore the Saudi declaration itself. One of the kind of emotive question which is put is that, is the Saudi Arabians lying? What would they achieve from lying? You know, this is a very serious slander that you're making against the Saudi government and against these people who look like decent, upright Muslims, that they are making a declaration and you are accusing them of lying. So let's explore that first. In order to explore that, we need to adopt husn dhan, of course. We're talking here about fellow Muslims. So what could possibly have gone wrong? Well, there are many, and there are a catalogue of errors which have exists, and mistaken identity, which I have personally put together in a detailed research paper, which I will link to this, inshallah ta'ala, which can be read, explaining many a times where errors have been made. And these errors have been made, and then later attempts have been made to fix those errors by ending up with two dates which are on one particular day and others. But I won't go into too much detail now. I want to keep this relatively brief. The other more serious matter is something called CCD. Now, for those of us who don't know, CCD is charged coupled device. And a charged coupled device is a type of camera. Now, what is it? The type of camera that it is that it can see things beyond what can be normally seen. Let me give you an example. If you had a normal photo image of an item, it would be able to take in 5% of the light. A CCD image takes in 95% of the light. To give you an even better idea, CCD works between 200 and 1200 nanometers. Whereas the human eye works between 380 and 740 nanometers. So putting that in even more layman terms, it sees what the human eye can't see. That's the big issue. It sees what the human eye can't see. And as we know from the hadith is quite clear, sumu li ru'yatihi wa aftiru li ru'yatihi, and this ru'ya is based on the eye. Now yes, we can use equipment and apparatus like we wear glasses in order to improve our sight, and like we can use binoculars, and like we can use telescope, because all we're doing is we're enlarging an image of a thing which is already there. We're not bringing an image into reality. The image is there. All we're doing is we're enhancing that in order to see it better. But with CCD imagery, what's going on is that image is not visible to the eye. It is invisible to the eye because the range in which the eye operates is very narrow, and the range in which a CCD image or piece of kit works is a much broader range. This explains a lot what goes on when we see these charts, when we see these astronomical charts, and we see that it's virtually impossible to be seen in certain parts of the world, and yet we still get this declaration. So I am of the view that this is most likely based on CCD imagery. Now that is another problem that we have, is why is there such a lack of transparency? Why is there such a lack of having this work carried out or assessed individually? I guess the Saudis would say, well, it's none of your business. And they'd be absolutely right to say so, because at the end of the day, they are an independent sovereign state, and they're allowed to do as they choose when they choose. Who are we to say otherwise? So let's put that to one side. And normally I tend not to get involved in these kind of discussions, to be honest, because I feel sometimes there's less to gain and more to lose, and it's better for each party to do their own work. However, there has been, as I've said, numerous requests made to me, and also there has been things flying around via social media, certain ahadith quoted, certain statements made. So as a result, because in order for those people who've asked me for their own contentment of mind that they're doing things correctly, I will spend the next sort of 10-15 minutes addressing those, inshallah. The first point is made is a hadith is quoted, which is as-sawma yawma tasumun, wal-fitru yawma tuftirun, wal-adha yawma tudahhun. And this argument is made that we should be with the majority, meaning fasting is the day when you fast, meaning the people fast, and not fasting, Eid al-Fitr, is the day when people don't fast, and Eid al-Adha is the day when people make Eid al-Adha. So the argument that is made is that people should go with the majority because that's the definition of the actual fasting. In fact, this is not too dissimilar to other hadith we find, which is Yadullahi ma'al jama', and also La yajma'ullahu ummati ala dalala, and words to that effect, where we see that consensus or majority or words to that effect are given as a form of evidence. And we see that, in fact, we were the only ummah that is given ijma' as a dalil, whereas all the other ummahs were not given ijma' as a dalil. So this is the kind of argument that's put forward, that look, if everybody's fasting, then you should fast, and if everybody's celebrating Eid, then you should celebrate Eid. Now the problem that we have with that is that that's not necessarily true. The reason why that's not necessarily true is because if we look at this from a global perspective, because the word here, the terms which are used here are mutlaq, absolute. So if we look at it in a more general perspective, then we find that if you look across the world, then the majority of the world start Ramadan and end Ramadan on their own local sighting. That's the majority of the world. So if we are going to take this in a majority context, then that doesn't support the position that one should adopt citing from Saudi Arabia. Similarly, when you explore this hadith in more detail, we find, for example, Imam Khitabi has mentioned that this is about if someone was to make error in their ijtihad, meaning everybody got together, and when they got together, they went out trying to sight the moon on the 29th. They did not sight the moon, so therefore, acting on the hadith, فَإِنْ غُمِّ عَلَيْكُمُ الشَّهْرُ فَإِنْ غُمِّ عَلَيْكُمُ الْقَمَرُ, then that if it's been clouded over you, then فَأَدُّوا ثَلَاثِينَ, then count it as 30. So what they do is they look, they can't find it on the 29th. Because they can't find it on the 29th, they go back and keep one extra day as a fast. But later news reaches them. Later news reaches them that actually it was cited, or somebody had cited it, but they did not get the information across. Now they will not be considered as sinful. This is how Imam Khitabi understands it. Another understanding which is given about this hadith is this is referring to Yawm Shak, that the day of doubt. So normally people are a little bit paranoid, so the day before Ramadan starts is termed as Yawm Shak. So out there paranoia, what they do is, you know what they say, just to be on the safe side, ihtiyatan, taking a precautionary measure, let's just fast today. It's not going to kill me, is it? It's either going to be a nafil if it's not Ramadan, and if it is Ramadan, then I've got Ramadan as well. So it's actually referring to that one should not do that and just fast when everybody else is fasting. The third argument which is given for it is that this is referring to one witness, a witness who sees it. He sees the hilal, he's the only one who sees it, and therefore he goes to the qadi. The qadi, for whatever reason, does not accept it. So when the qadi does not accept it, then he should not fast either, and instead he should go by the majority. However, that's a problem just with that statement alone, because in the Hanafi madhab, if one person was to see the moon and he went to the qadi and the qadi rejected his sighting, it is still wajib upon him to fast. So that clearly shows that this hadith does not operate in the way that some people are using it as a form of argument. But then let's explore the concept of an-nas. Are we really saying here that democracy plays such a role in fiqh, that people, irrespective of their status in terms of scholarship, irrespective of their status in terms of research, that as long as a large group of people suddenly decide that we're going to fast, let's just say everybody in the UK, all the Muslims decided it's going to be Eid on Friday, that means we're all going to just go celebrate Eid on Friday. Does that make sense? But when this is explored in more detail, we find that this is actually referring to what's termed the Sawadul A'zam, Now, what is this term? This term is used particularly a lot in books of aqaid about this term of the majority. But what is referring to here as the majority is the sound position. In fact, the term which is used is al-jama'atu ma wafaq al-haq wa in kunta wahdak. That the jama'ah is actually the ones who are upon truth, even if the person is one. So here we're not talking a kind of a democratic position here, because democracy has very little to play in fiqh. Even when we see about siyasa, politics, which take place within the Sharia, then the people who are in charge aren't democratically elected. They are what's termed as Ahlul Halwal. So this is the term which is given, which this is those people who have expertise in that area. Not necessarily people who've been voted in just because they have a favorable position. So I hope I've given sufficient understanding to how this hadith is being misused or misinterpreted. Further on, there's another kind of emotive statement made that, hold on, our Sharia is based on witnesses. So if witnesses come forward, then what are you saying? Are you expecting the Qadi to just reject those witnesses just based on a potential projection of where the moon could have possibly been or couldn't have been? Is that what you're suggesting here? Surely our whole deen is based on witnessing. Whether it's nikah, whether it's bay, all aspects of our deen is witnessing. In fact, you would rather go by a witness statement than even if there was CCTV or DNA or anything like that, because they aren't legislated or responsible. However, this is a very simplistic or rather oversimplification of the Sharia and how the work of qadha takes place. Let me give you an example. There has to be within the Sharia, within judgeship, within the qadha, due process and due diligence. So for instance, somebody comes to me, let's just pretend that I'm a qadi for a second, and someone comes to me and he says to me that I've seen the moon, and I said that's fine. And another person comes to me and he says I've seen the moon, so I said that's fine. I says right, that means obviously it's now Eid tomorrow. Is it not my responsibility to actually question them? To say, okay, where did you see it, brother? And he says, oh, I saw it on that part of the sky. And I say, where did you see it, brother? And he says, I saw it on that part of the sky. Now, clearly, this brother does not know where he's looking. He's seen something else. So there is always this aspect of due diligence. And there's other aspects of the Sharia. For example, if, say, obviously, if one was residing within a Sharia state and zina had taken place, and if 4 witnesses had come forward, it won't be that just because those 4 witnesses come forward and they say, oh, I saw Abdullah with Fatima and that's it, and then straight away the had punishment is applied. This would be a poor application of the Sharia. The Qadi will separately interview each one of these people and say, where were you? What were they wearing? What did you see? Give me the exact description of what you saw. Who did you see? Who do you think Abdullah is? Describe Abdullah to me. This would be a due diligence and due process that would take place before that. We would be making a mockery of deen if people were just willy-nilly coming forward. And unfortunately, we now live in a society where mistakes are made and also people have access to grind and agendas. So they will always be trying to get somebody there. So this is also the process of qadha. So instead of using emotive language, that we are now giving calculations a superiority over witnessing, and witnessing is what the Sharia suggested, then this again is an oversimplification and a poor understanding of the Sharia. The final point before I finish off, inshallah ta'ala, is that calculations are not facts. For instance, we know the moon set time, we know the moon rise time, we know the sunset time, and we know the sunrise time. But these others are basically predictions, they're algorithms. Data has been fed into these algorithms, into the system, and these algorithms then deduce where possibility the moon can and can't be sighted. So how can we be using calculations against witnessing, ru'yat? Surely we are based on ru'yat, absolutely based on ru'yat. But also again, it is up to the Qadi to take other factors into consideration in order to determine the quality and the veracity of the witness statement being presented to him. So he needs to make sure that what he's getting is correct. So these calculations are not negating the ru'ya, they are used as a tool by the Qadi to determine the accuracy of the statement that these people are making. However, this is also an oversimplification to say that we don't accept calculations. Of course we do. What do we do for Salah times? Do we really go out and check when Zawal takes place? When was the last time you went outside to check Zawal takes place? You would automatically go to the HMNAO website, download the spreadsheets from there and decide that this is going to be Zawal because astronomical data is taking place. Tomorrow's Fajr time is already on your timetable. That's also a prediction. Tomorrow's Maghrib time is also on your timetable. The fact that zero point 0.8 degrees is taken into consideration by HMNAO in order to take into consideration refraction to determine when Maghrib is taking place is also a calculation. All these are based on calculations. To say then for those who practice the concept of astronomical twilight, where they're saying that the sun does not even go below 18 degrees, this is also, again, calculations. So we can't pick and choose when calculations suit us and when calculations don't suit us. We have to have a consistent Sharia. Our Sharia is always consistent. And when we apply it in our fiqh, it must also be consistent. But that's also runs a bit of a mockery to say that calculations are not facts, when at least 8 months of the year on that the Saudi government produced their calendar is based on the al-Qura. It's not based on sighting at all. So if calculations are such a big problem, then why would the Saudis themselves consider it to be valid to make their timetable for 8 months of the year, apart from Ramadan and Shawwal and possibly one other month? So therefore, in summary, clearly the points which were made were the issue of the hadith, which says that we should fast with the majority. I hope I have tackled that. The other argument that was made was rejecting witnesses. And the final argument that was made was that calculations are not compulsory. One thing I will say just before I finish off, there was a time, maybe in the 80s and the 90s, where ulama could say something and everybody would readily accept it. Those times have changed. We live in a completely different world now. People are more engaged with fiqh matters, even the general public are. People know, people are professionals. We're not living in villages anymore where the Maulvi Sahib can just say to the village people and everybody would accept it. People are now criticizing, scrutinizing. So you're getting a lot of, and there's a massive movement, and it's particularly the kind of hashtag generation. And there's a massive movement now which is challenging statements that are being made. Now, obviously, this is my address particularly to the ulama. Now, if the ulama don't take this matter seriously, then what they will find is that people will separate. And it's already been happening. I've been, so many people that I've literally lost count, that have been in touch with me, that are non-scholars, that are now dealing with the moon sighting issue. And that movement is picking up speed, and it's picking up and moving in a very, very strong way. Now, if we dissociate ourselves from our community, or if we stick our head in the sand from our community, then there'll be more to lose than we can do. So I hope that over the 15, 20 minutes or so, I've been able to explain how that works. For those of you who came in a little bit late, this will be available on our Twitter account and YouTube channel, inshallah, in which I've explained it in great detail. So please do listen to it there and forward it to others. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.
Was it possible on Monday to see you?
Sorry?
Monday was possible.
Was it possible to see the moon on Monday? In terms of the sighting of the moon on Monday, it was close to being impossible. The reason why it was close to being impossible, because the moon itself had only been born for approximately 6 hours. And when I did some research on this particular topic, I looked at data from around the middle of the 19th century all the way up to 2017, which was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pieces of data. This data was then analyzed, and the youngest possible sighting that you could do of a moon is 18 hours old. That's the youngest possible. And again, this research is available on our channel and website, where you'll see this, where this data. The thing is, I'm very fortunate in that I have experience in science as well. My first degree is in applied chemistry, so I've been using data and analyzing data half my life. So therefore, it's not just a case that you need expertise in fiqh, you also need expertise in the science behind it, because that's what we are. So when we talk about things like, say, contamination or food, for example, if we're talking about whether food is halal or haram, you need expertise in food technology. You can't just decide something is halal or haram depending on what's going inside it. So this is a very important. So no, it wasn't possible to sight, and therefore, really, if we look at Saudi's declaration, then it was based on, as I presume, on the CCD imagery rather than anything else. But obviously, what we don't want to do is, and unfortunately, because we argue this in a more emotional way rather than in a people of understanding, we kind of get worked up. So therefore, what needs to happen is, once things settle down a little bit, then I think people do need to look at this. It is somewhat disheartening that when things like this happen, and also happened in Sha'ban as well, that folk are just kind of plodding on and it's business as usual. I don't know what it's going to take before, people kind of sit back and think, well, hold on a second here. Surely we need to review this. What the Saudis do is their problem, is their business. They're a sovereign state. They can declare what they like. But we are not necessarily obliged. Now, there is a big movement that's taking place in the UK for local sighting. And we actually carry out local sighting. In fact, I received, and Musab here as well, I personally received dozens of people getting in touch with me, giving their shahada of what they'd seen and in fact I've got a call straight after this coming from Bristol, because some brothers saw it in Bristol as well. But in London, in several places, people were making contact. So what's happened now is we've stopped even looking for the moon. Now, going to another foreign country is only based on darura. It's only based on necessity, because we ourselves can't see it. But the only time we know we can't see it is if we've been out to look for it. But if we're not going to go out to look for it, how are we going to see it? And unfortunately, we've just become so casual about it, so cavalier about it, that, oh, what's the point? And in fact, like I said right at the beginning, we don't even wait for the UK committee to make a declaration, because the UK committee can't make the declaration before Maghrib. So we're already saying Eid Mubarak, and it's not even Asr time. It's not even Asr time yet. So we're still in Ramadan. So until so this is what I'm saying, unfortunately, the lack of education that we have in this topic has led us into this area. So we as, people, members of the community, need to take this seriously. We need to engage with it ourselves, because at the end of the day, the famous thing is, it's people power. So when the people stand up and they start to challenge things in a respectful way, with with the respect that should be given when addressing the scholars, and say, look, can we look at this? Can we address this? Can we, there's a lot of things coming here which it just doesn't sit right. It doesn't make sense. We're not obliged to follow what any other country is doing. We're obliged to do what is right for us. Which other countries can we go to? Once we recognize the problem, then we can explore lots of things. During our discussions, we've seen that there's brothers in France who actually go out to sight it. Now, we wouldn't have known that. I'm on another group where there's brothers in Spain that saw it as well yesterday. Now, these are more closer to home. Western Europe is literally on our doorstep. So we can extend our boundaries, our geographical boundaries, to go beyond UK and include France, include Spain, maybe include the Netherlands. We found out recently the Netherlands have their own committee as well. So until we recognize the problem and then do something about it, the something about it is going to come then. But if we don't recognize the problem, and if we just continue to plod along, then unfortunately there will be more turmoil than there will be serenity. And yes, there will always be a little bit of difficulty that we will go through. But I think, inshallah, as I said, there's a lot of work going on in the background. And there are some parties who are concerned and who are, they may not show it publicly in order to save public face, but they are concerned and they are trying to sit around the table. That's what needs to happen. And inshallah ta'ala, all being well then, at least we can be very confident of our fast, and we can then be very confident of our Eids as well, inshallah ta'ala. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the tawfiq to act upon what's said. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Durust